Hello, and thank you for checking out this Ayrshare video. Today, we're going to use the no-code app building tool, FlutterFlow, to create a social posting app using the Ayrshare API. All right, let's jump right into it. We're going to get started by creating a new project in FlutterFlow. We're going to call it the social posting app. We're going to skip all of the extra setup steps, and here we have a blank app. So let's start by giving some text to the page title. I'll just give it the name Social Posting App. And then we're going to build out the user interface. So let's start with a text field. We're going to call it text field API key. And the label that we're going to give is API key. We'll add some padding to this input. And generally, we'll add padding to a few of the inputs just to make the app look a little bit better. And generally, we use the outline input border type to make it a little easier to see where one element ends and one begins. The next text field, we're going to call text field post text. We'll give it some label text as well. And for this one, we're going to change it to 5 lines. You may have a few sentences of text that you may want to post. The next text field, we're going to call text field media URL. This is where we will put in, or the user will enter the URL for an image. If there's an image that they want to add to the post, we'll give it some label text. Then we're going to add in an image element. And this is really just an image preview. When the user enters a URL in that text field, this element will show a preview of that image. We're just going to resize it to make it a little bit smaller. Then we'll add a checkbox group. This checkbox group is going to be the list of social networks that you could choose from. So let's say you want to post to multiple social networks. You'll check off multiple boxes. And then finally, we'll add a button, which will be our submit button. Okay, so these are the core elements that we need for our app. Let's start connecting everything. The first thing we're going to need to do is create a few variables to store the data from these input boxes. The first variable is going to be called API key, and we're storing these as local page state variables. The second one is post text. Both of these are strings. And the next one is a media URL, which is also a string. We're going to add some actions. So we're going to add an onChange action to the API key input box. And it's going to update the API key variable to the value of what's in that text field. We're going to do the same thing for post text and for media URL. The image, we're going to set the path equal to the text in that media URL. text field input. For the checkbox group, we're going to give it some options, which we're just going to hard code because these don't really change. So we're going to offer our users Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn as potential destinations. The next thing we have to configure for our app is the Ayrshare API. So we're going to go into the API section and configure a new API call. We'll call it Ayrshare Post. It's going to be a post call, and you can get the details on all the Ayrshare endpoints in the docs. And the post call is app.ayrshare.com/API/post. And all the parameters are available in docs, so you know exactly how to use these endpoints. There's two headers that we need for this API call. One is the authorization header, which has the API key, and one is the content type header. Now we're going to set the body to be JSON, and the values that we're going to send in the body are going to come in from some variables that we set based on what the user enters into these input boxes. So let's create a few variables. We'll create a variable for the post text, which is a string. We're going to create a variable for the platforms, which is a string. And this one we're actually going to say is also a list. There could be multiple platforms. And then media URLs is also a string. So let's go ahead and create the body. This is all spelled out with examples in the Ayrshare docs. So we'll put in post and drag in a post variable. We'll create media URLs and drag in the media URLs variable. It's nice how FlutterFlow automatically adds the quotes. And we'll drag in the platforms variable as well. Click the add call button, and that's all set. Now we can wire up the submit button with an action, which will be a flow with a few steps. The first step is going to be the Ayrshare post API call, which we just configured. And we need to send it the values for these variables that we created. So the variables are going to be sent to the API call. For platforms, we're going to take it straight from the checkbox group. Okay, we have our three variables set. And now we'll create an action if this is true or false. True meaning it's a successful API call, and false meaning it's an error response for the API call. So we'll use an informational dialog. Now, in a real app, you're going to want to put in slightly more advanced logic to actually do something in your app if it's successful, like maybe show a link to the post, and if there's an error, show what the error is to the user. But here we're just going to put them in an alert dialog. So we're going to take the output of the API call, take the JSON body, and show it in a success alert dialog if it's success. And that's the title of the dialog. And we'll do the exact same thing for the error informational dialog. We'll just use a different title. Okay, great. Now the submit button is fully configured. Let's go ahead and test the app. Usually takes a couple minutes for the testing session to be created in FlutterFlow, so we'll just fast forward through that. Let's go ahead and test it. So we'll put some post text. We'll add in a media URL. We can see the image preview when we put in the media URL. And let's pick Twitter and Facebook as destination, submit it. It's making the API call and sending over all the data. And we get a success with the JSON response. Now, in the response, there's actually links, but in FlutterFlow, you can't copy or paste from these information dialogues in the tester. So what we'll do is we'll just go into the Ayrshare dashboard and take a look at the post timeline, and we can see there it is. There's the success for what we just posted with the links to Facebook and Twitter. So let's click the Facebook link. There's the post we just created. Let's click the Twitter link. Fantastic. Now, as part of the testing, you may have noticed that we didn't enter an API key, and that's because we hard-coded the API key into the API call. And what we really need here is not the API key. What we really need here is the profile key. The Ayrshare business plan allows you to have as many users as you have on your platform, and each of the users has their individual user profile with a profile key. Now, usually you would have some kind of authentication when your user is logged into your platform. It would pull the profile key from your database. We're not building that here. So really what we want is that first field to be the profile key, so you can enter a different profile key for each of the users, and the Ayrshare system will know which profile is connected to those social accounts and send it to the appropriate social accounts. Let's make a few edits to this app and change that first input box and change the API call to honor these different profile keys. So the first input box and the label, we're going to change from API key to profile key. We're going to change the variable from API key to profile key. And in the API call, we're going to add another variable called profile key. And the way that you send it in the API call is you send it as part of the body. So the header, you keep your primary API key, and in the body, you send the profile key associated with that user. So we add the profile key as a string, and in the body, we will add one additional element to the JSON, which is the profile key. Remember to add the comma. Let's format it and save it. Now we need to go in and edit the API call as part of the action, because now we're sending in the profile key as well, and the value comes from that text field input box profile key. So we'll close that. And in the Ayrshare dashboard, you could switch between profiles. Your primary profile shows your API key, and picking a different user profile will give you the profile key for that individual profile. So let's go ahead and test the app with a profile key. We're going to send it to all 3 social networks that we configured. There we go, success. And we can look in the Ayrshare dashboard. There it is. We can click on the links to the live posts. There's the Facebook one, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or X as it's now called. There's only one other edit we want to make to the app, which is when the image URL, the media URL, has no value, it sort of shows a broken image in the app. So we're just going to add a conditional value. So it's only going to be visible if there is a media URL. Let's just test it out. Okay, great. That broken image is gone. And let's paste in a media URL to test it out. And there we go. It shows the image preview only if there's a media URL. Perfect. Thank you so much for watching this no-code tutorial featuring FlutterFlow and Ayrshare. Be sure to check out the Ayrshare YouTube channel for other great videos on how to build your social media app. Thank you.